This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. StoryBeat episodes are available at storybeat.net and on all major podcast apps and platforms. If you like this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or review. And won't you please subscribe to StoryBeat wherever you listen to podcasts? Well, I'm thrilled to have as my guest today on StoryBeat the extraordinary, dynamic Debbi Dachinger. Debbi's a media personality and media visibility expert. She's been interviewed on over 1,500 media outlets, and for over 13 years, she's hosted the syndicated award-winning podcast Dare to Dream, for which she's been nominated for 2 People's Choice Podcast Awards. Debbi also interviews celebrities on the red carpet, acts as a keynote speaker, a certified coach, and she's the author of 3 international best-selling books, including Dare to Dream, Wisdom to Success, and The Ultimate Book for Dog Lovers. As a media authority, Debbi coaches clients on how they can write a page-turner book, helping authors take their work to international bestseller status. And in the Ultimate Visibility Formula, Debbi teaches clients how to be interviewed on radio and podcasts in 60 days or less. For more, please be sure to visit DebbiDachinger.com. For the record, Debbi and I have known one another for more years than either of us are about to admit, having met while both of us were in school at the University of Southern California. We worked together on a show called Virgil, which was written and directed by a favorite StoryBeat guest, Vicangelo Bullock. So for all those reasons and many more, it's a real honor and my great pleasure to welcome my friend, Debbi Dachinger, to StoryBeat today. Debbi, thanks for joining me.
Steve, it's such a pleasure to spend time with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, believe me, it's my pleasure. So let's go back to your beginnings. Long before you became a media personality and did a podcast or were on the radio, way back when, what first attracted you to the arts or to the stage? What brought you to that in the first place?
It was the only place I felt at home. It was the one place I could express myself. And it didn't matter if I was doing comedy or drama or singing or dancing or just straight acting. But somehow the stage, that element was my home. And I felt very connected to everybody in that realm, whether they did lighting, whether they did sound or a director, or were in the back running props, or were the other actors. There was such a sense of family there. And yeah, it was the only thing I wanted to do ever.
Did you feel most comfortable being in front of people, being in front of a crowd? Was that where you felt you're most like you?
More at home being me on stage than I was in my real life. I was actually incredibly awkward and very introverted, in fact, growing up, extremely so.
Did the stage help you come out of your introversion into being more extroverted?
I don't know that it helped me. It was the dichotomy was so extreme. So in my real life, interacting with people, I was not good at it. Other than maybe a few people I could do one-on-one with. Outside of that, I was just incredibly awkward. No sense of who I was. I always felt like I had a camera outside of me. I was so self-aware and so self-judgmenting, actually. It was, very painful. And then once I got a script in my hand or there was something that excited me, passion was the greatest leader in my life, because if I found passion and I followed whatever that excitement was, I always did very well. And it led me to all the right places and spaces and people. And so that was like my secret sauce, find what lights me up and follow that. I didn't have to even understand it. But following that, no matter what realm it was, I started as a very little kid. I grew up in an incredibly musical family, some of them very well known in music. And that was all that mattered for me, was following that line. And and showing up where it brought me a lot of joy. So yes, a big difference, but stage didn't bring it out in me. Stage was actually my home. Acting was my
So
home.
your persona was actually being on, if you want to call it that, being in the spotlight. That was your actual persona, and everything else was a little bit more disconcerting or difficult for you to go through. Yes?
100%. Yeah.
Well, that's, I think a lot of people have that. You can look at a lot of very famous people and they're very shy and awkward off stage. But when they're on stage, I think Johnny Carson, who was painfully shy, used to say that it was when he wasn't in control of the moment, which he was on his show. He was in control, but off stage, he had no control over the world. So he felt more shy and awkward that way. Is that similar for you, I assume?
Yeah, that's very interesting example. And I didn't know that about him, but I will say that much has changed. It's not like that for me anymore. It was like that for me probably until I hit my 30s.
And what
So
changed? What changed for you? Was it doing radio, or what changed for you?
no, I had to do the inner work. I really did. I had to do a lot of work on myself and start to understand what was going on, what was in my way. It's really good when you're in the arts to have a personality. And as well as I do, that people who are very charming, who are great storytellers, who are funny and have a way to connect easily with people, sort of the bon vivant of any party, they do very well because people want to be around them.
Right.
So they'll bring them into projects. And I wasn't that. You had to cast me first before you could find out what a cool person I was. And I would start to warm up and open up. So I just did a lot of work on myself. And I would say, for a long time now, it's certainly not been that and continues to get better and better. And I would say, I'm definitely an extrovert. I'll go into any party now and be completely comfortable. I'll meet people, I'll make friends. It doesn't matter if I don't know anybody. And once upon a time, that would have been unthinkable. But yeah, it was really about taking the journey about what's going on inside of Debbi and what's possible, a lot of therapy, a lot of healing modalities. I was in it. I was in it to win it. Pain is a great motivator. So I wanted to be as comfortable in my life as I was in acting.
I suspect pretty much anyone who's known you for the past, I don't want to give away years, but let's say the last bunch of years, they would be very surprised that you were shy or awkward ever. So that you had to overcome that. That's a big deal. And I think that's a lesson for the listeners, that it's very important that you do come out of your shell somewhat, or the world won't know you're there. I mean, the show business is not going to come knocking on your door. You have to go to the door and knock. And so for you, you needed to come out of your shell, and you put in the time, the effort, and the energy. And I think that it shows, obviously, today, especially with everything you've done. Did you know early on that you wanted to be on the radio, or was that something that came over a long time?
No idea, no desire. What had happened was things started getting wonky for me as an actress and a singer. And I was doing it professionally for a long time. And all of a sudden, and I'm being very honest, I wasn't showing up the way I used to. And to be very clear, it was a year I was cast in more parts than anything else. And I wasn't wanting to flesh out my character. I wasn't wanting to work on my lines. And it was a part of me sitting back observing and saying, who is this? Because I've always been so dedicated. What it was really is things started to change for me. And this is a perfect example of not knowing, but I eventually had to trust. It was surrender and then trust. Clearly something was up. Clearly something wasn't going away. It was getting in the way. And I did have this pervasive feeling of, is there something else for me? Since I didn't know what that was, I just opened myself up. And I started doing speaking. I joined Toastmasters and I started speaking all around Los Angeles, balance, goals. I was getting in front of companies and talking and being a motivational speaker. And in the background, my the little voice in my head was saying, well, this is really interesting and I'm loving this, but I'm not sure this is it. And then I got a gig with a big band and jazz bands, and I was singing and I was loving it, a lot of work. And I think the next thing that happened was, that there was a producer who had recommended me for a cartoon. And I had never done a cartoon. I auditioned for it. And I was so fascinated by the process. And I did the reading. I didn't do very well the first time, and I knew I had sort of bombed it, but I was fairly in love with this character and I wanted it badly. So I begged them, please, one more read. I have another idea. And they were gracious enough to allow me that second read. Apparently, I gave them something nobody had thought of or considered or brought to the table. I got the part first time out. And then they found out I sang and they were very excited. They didn't have to hire a singer, but I got that money too. And I loved the process. So after that, I got a VO agent, a voiceover agent, and I was being sent out all the time. And concurrently, I saw an ad for a spot at radio in Hollywood. And I thought, oh, that'll help me get my voice out there more. Why don't we do that? That was my greatest thinking at the time. But I feel like the universe had a much bigger design for me, Steve. You know, again, I was following energy, but I really feel like it was put in my path for a reason, because I know today that what I'm doing with radio, with the books I've written, with the people I coach and help around the same subjects, that I'm really doing the work I'm supposed to do, because it has put me in the path of my greatest growth and also to meet the greatest people I could imagine. And much like you and what you do, I have made friends and relationships with people that have opened doors and changed my life by virtue of knowing these influencers. And there's not a day that goes by where I don't feel enormously grateful that I landed here.
Well, you know, this is a common theme for people who are successful, that they've opened themselves up to the world, the universe, to whatever that is, and that they blossom from it. And if you don't open yourself up to it, those doors, again, that we just said, remain closed. So you have to go and bloom yourself, basically, because nobody's going to come and nobody's going to pour water on you and tend to you. You have to do it. So you call yourself a spiritual entrepreneur. So for the listeners, explain what that is. I think you're sort of alluding to it already, but what is a spiritual entrepreneur?
Yeah, I would say that there's many of us out there, and those tend to be my clients, that a spiritual entrepreneur is not somebody who's religious and they don't follow dogma. But they are very open to a god, a goddess, whatever energy you want to call it that's out there, that they are very connected with, a part of. I think they see themselves often as light workers and as people who are here at this time, this very interesting time on the planet, and that we're here to do really big work, that we're called to do big things. And oftentimes we're very creative, extremely sensitive, and very gifted, you know, sometimes have healing abilities. And I mean, actually, this harkens back to what we said in the beginning. A part of what was going on for me that I didn't realize as a child is how enormously sensitive I was and how much I actually was able to perceive beyond, you know, the normal eyes, ears, nose, mouth.
Go a little further than that. When you say sensitive, that could mean all kinds of things. What do you mean in your case as sensitive? Are you an empath? What do you mean by being sensitive?
Definitely an empath. Definitely I can be in a room and I'll know what's going on in the room. I know what's happening with people. I didn't know that then. It was actually overwhelming. But I understand way more than what somebody would from a regular interaction. And which is, by the way, a great gift when you're working with clients, right?
Yes,
and
sure.
People really want to move ahead when you can perceive things that they can't necessarily, to really help them with their strengths and weaknesses. But yes, I could perceive energies. I have a gift for smells, if you will. That took a really long time to understand.
A gift for smells. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, you know, basically I'm a clairsentient. That means that instead of clairvoyant and things like that, that through my senses, through my extreme sensitivity, I get a lot of information. And it used to be that I would be, for instance, in a building. And I remember walking up to an elevator one time and I smelled something that was so from heaven. It smelled like a Cinnabon, which typically I would not be attracted to.
Right.
But it's like if you could take that and imagine an earthly version that wasn't sickly sweet, but that was so delicious. And I was in heaven thinking, where's that coming from? asking all these strangers waiting for an elevator, God, do you smell that? Do you smell that? And everybody was looking at me like, no. It's happened with roses, the smell of roses and other things. And it took a very long time till somebody was kind enough coming on my radio show, a psychic who said, I need to tell you something about yourself you don't know. I really want to help you. And I will be forever grateful to her because she helped me so much to understand and accept myself, to better understand, and then to have fun with all of it. So it's really it's sort of like being able to see the matrix of a lot of things going on. And yeah, it's just a part of who I am now.
So in other words, you are able to grasp things that are not obvious. They're not on the surface. They're not out. There's things that you're sensing from wherever it's coming from the universe or from energy that's out there in some way. And how does that then help you connect to your clients? Is there ever a danger that you're reading something that is in some way dangerous to them or could be harmful to them? Do you ever read that too? Or is it all light and positive?
It feels like neither. I'm not really that interested in darkness. And it's not like I have a psychic gift, like, oh, someone's going to die in your family. But
so you don't think of yourself as a psychic then?
No,
you're just sensitive to things that come your way, but it's not psychic energy.
To be me is like to be a computer. And so
that's interesting.
Yes. So everything we're doing and anyone is hearing or seeing is exactly as is. But sometimes, and probably constantly, that I'm just super used to it, I am receiving downloads or uploads all the time. Now, I used to not know what to do with that. So there used to be a lot of separation inside of me and also judgment because I didn't understand. It seems so strange. How would I know all these things? And now I know, I just know I'm receiving information. And there's modulating, there's navigating, because I also have learned it's not okay to just blurt this stuff out. Not everybody wants to hear it or is interested, and I'm not always interested in sharing it. But when I have somebody that I'm literally helping, just imagine, for instance, somebody who it would be a great coup for them to be able to book radio and podcast interviews, right? For instance, you write books, I write books. We know a big part of launching our books and keeping our books out there in front of people is doing interviews.
Right.
So for people who don't understand the system, I can take somebody and help them to understand, well, first of all, the system of being interviewed, that's one piece, but then everybody brings something different. Everyone's going to have inherent gifts, very easy, and it's yummy to help them understand you're really good at this and this is why. Let me point this out. But then, with a lot of kindness, here are some things we can work on, because I want you to get results. I want you to have followers. I want your tribe to find you. I want you to sell books. I want you to get asked back to the show, whatever it is that we can do to help them move forward.
Right. Well, so you say that you help clients to discover the message they're meant to share. That's what you're talking about right here. That's your gift, really, that you're giving back to the world, I think, is that you're helping people to fulfill their own destiny. And they may not even know what that destiny is. Am I correct about that?
So correct. I learned early on when I put together classes to ask people what they need. So what is it if you could get anything out of this class, out of this experience, what would that be?
What if they don't know? How do you pull that out of them?
I don't think I've ever had somebody not know. So you ask the very specific question. That's how you pull it out.
I see.
What do you not know, for instance, about writing a book? Or if you know about writing a book, what is stopping you from finishing your book? Or why aren't you getting booked on radio? And if you could be booked on radio and want to feel very comfortable and confident, what is it you need to be schooled on or really savvy about that will make you feel very comfortable? And so I started getting a lot of information back from fairly successful people saying, I don't know how to say what I do in 1 or 2 sentences. I don't know my message. And I was like, oh, well, that's got to be included in the class now, because I didn't realize that was so prevalent. So I've learned to ask people what they need. I'm pretty clear about the system, but I'm not ever clear on everything. And so if I can work with people exactly where they are, then they will get great results.
How important is it? And I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you say it. How important is it that you be able in 1 or 2 sentences to express who and what you're about?
Everything, who you are, what you do, what you stand for, who you stand for, and how you stand out.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. Whether you're at a networking meeting and we've all experienced that, right? Or we're in a room where they say, everybody get up, you have 30 seconds, we just want to introduce ourselves. Most of the time we all glaze over, and there'll always be that 1 or 2 person who are able to get up and articulate in such a way that he's either clever and you won't forget it, or is so compelling you lean in and say, I gotta meet that person. I need to work with them or find out more. That's what it's really all about. It's about being super clear. And of course, you have to have a little bit of the benefit in there. Why work with me? What do I provide? What is probably the very prevalent pain point out there that I'm going to help fulfill? And then why me? So there's got to be a way that you stand out.
And
So
how hard is it to develop that message? Is it for most people difficult, or is it for most people easy once they've tapped into it in some way?
More often than not, it's difficult.
I would think it, the old adage about storytelling, because that's what you're asking people to do, is to tell a story about themselves in a very short, moment. And the truth is, there's no more difficult storytelling than short storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to elucidate over a very long haul, many pages, but to bring it down to 1 or 2 sentences, that's really hard. And to get the whole message clear. And it is about clarity. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And, you see it everywhere. I mean, it can be used everywhere. So yes, messaging is everything. I break it up into me, sage. I think everybody's got some wisdom about something.
What's me, sage? What's that?
So it's message.
Oh,
broken up.
That one right over my head. Me, sage is message. That's very good.
Yeah. Everyone's got a sage inside of them. They've got some kind of inherent wisdom. Everybody knows something about their expertise that nobody else knows, because it's your filter. And that's what we want.
There is no such thing as 2 people who are the same. So that's a very, very powerful message, because I think a lot of people, I know I've been through that, and I'm betting you've been through it too, where you think you have to be like others in some way. But in fact, what you need to be is you.
And it's the greatest seller. Authenticity is everything, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can see right now in the world, which is pretty interesting. It's maybe a different definition of authenticity, but that people are looking at, I want somebody who's going to tell it like it is, right? So I won't go political here, but I will say that definitely in the realm of thought leaders, book writers, personalities out there, we are looking for somebody. Maybe they have an expression that's different, or a way of behaving that's different, or dressing that's different. It's just so indigenous to themselves, like they're really honoring their being and not trying to blend in. So trying to be milquey toast, I don't think is interesting for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, authenticity is a pretty big word right now.
Well, for sure. There are certain people that try to be different, but they're not being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to fit into some kind of a niche that they see out there. Then they think, I'll do that. I'll dress this way, or I'll act that way, or I'll sing these songs, or I'll act in those parts. And they wind up being false. They feel false because they're not being true to themselves. And I tell you what, I think that most people don't know who they are till some point in the middle years of their existence. It's very hard for a person to truly know who they are when they're, say, late teen or early 20s. So I think living life is a part of that lesson. And I know you went through that. I know I went through that. It took me a long time to understand who I was.
Yeah. And I think also that's true. And I also think that more and more there are children and young adults who are scary wise, who are being born
no doubt
with capabilities. I recently have spent time with a 16-year-old girl named Nicole. I'm madly in love with her dad. I'm madly, not like that, not romantically, but as a human. And with her, they're extraordinary people. And She and I have been texting. And I feel like, honestly, so honored to be in relationship with this girl. And she knows, I've already told her, whatever I can do for her, it would mean everything for me. And I sometimes wonder if she's not mentoring me. She has heard my boyfriend and I sing and perform, and she's so wonderful. She'll send us videos through text and say, this is a really woke band. So the way she expresses herself, or I want you to check out this artist. She's queen, and I'll follow her suggestions because I want that influence. I want to know what else is out there that I don't know about. Or she sends me these YouTube videos. And she's even taught me ways to meditate. I'll just share one thing with you I thought was so delightful that Nicole said, because she is a big influencer in my life right now. She's so gorgeous. And I was saying, Nicole, I understand, like, you're the queen of meditating. And she said, oh, it's so simple. People make it just so complicated. First of all, just find some really high vibe music and put it on for 5 minutes. Then think about 3 things that you're grateful for. And then literally for 5 minutes, be happy for no reason. Ta-da.
Wow. That's huge. And how old is she? 16?
16.
That's crazy. And we had a very good example of it. We're recording this in the 3rd week of January in 2021. And we had an example this past week with the inauguration of Joe Biden for president. And this young poet, Amanda Gorman, holy mackerel, she just knocked it out of the park. And she's 22 years old and she's wiser than pretty much most 70-year-olds. She just understood things on a level that's very hard to grasp. That's not common. I mean, I've been teaching for 10 years and I want to, say what you say is true. I've learned more from the students I've had over 10 years than they've learned from me, although I hope they've learned something. But yes, you learn more from your students than they get from you. But at the same time, not everybody has what you're talking about at 16. That's rare.
She's ancient. Yes, there's no doubt.
An old soul, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about media visibility now. I want to switch gears just a little bit. You are clearly at this point a media visibility expert. That's what you are. People come to you for that. What comprises media visibility? What does that mean to those that are trying to figure out how to get themselves out there? What is media visibility? I mean, it sounds obvious, but you explain it.
Yeah, it's free. Isn't that great? You don't really have to pay to get on a podcast or a radio or a newspaper or a press release, or, well, writing a book is a different story, but it doesn't have to be that expensive. And there's a lot that's available. Most people just don't know how to utilize it, or why them, or think, oh, I have to be an extrovert in order to be successful. Completely untrue. I think introverts can be quite brilliant because they're the most observant. And it is about utilizing what is there to further why you're here. If you weren't here to be heard out loud or live out loud, I don't think you'd have been given a throat. I don't think you'd have been given a vision or a mission or a reason. And I think the visibility portion is so important, because when you know how to work being interviewed, when you know how to do press releases, when you know how to write a book, when you know how to, it's essentially marketing yourself. But I don't want to denigrate it and make it that it's something base, like, oh, this is a marketing ploy. I really mean that this is where you find your tribe and your community. This is how you fill the workshops so you can help people. This is how, for people who have a book inside of them, and 85% of people who want to write a book never will write the book, get it out in the world successfully.
Would you say that's due to fear or lack of knowledge, or why don't people finish a book?
I think it's lack of knowledge. I absolutely do. So many people feel like they can do it on their own, and they don't realize it's difficult, Steve. Can we say that out loud? It's hard to write a book.
It's harder than hell. But, I think that we both have experienced the notion of the publishing world has changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years, especially with self-publishing, which has has exploded into the universe. There's no question that anybody can publish a book today. You don't need Random House or Simon & Schuster to get a book out.
That's right. And the one thing I would say And take a look at Steve's books, because it's a great example of something that's done professionally from start to finish. And I'm big on that. Being a book writing coach, I don't let anyone's book go out unless it's professionally edited, formatted. It has a really beautiful cover, the endorsements. I mean, if you're going to give birth to a baby book, make sure it's healthy and it will thrive out into the world. Make sure that all that effort and love you've poured into it, it's really done beautifully and professionally out in the world. So yes, it takes work. And I think the 85% never finish that book because they get to a certain point and they realize like they're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much more than they ever anticipated.
Well, it's all, when you get into it, it's all consuming, and the amount of energy that goes into it is shocking when you get there if you've never done it. And you can't believe how much it takes to actually finish forget the writing part of it, which is enough. That's a huge task to be the writer of a book. But then all of the work that goes in after you've written it, to get it through the publishing process, to get it out into the world, to market it and publicize it, it's a huge undertaking. And I think I think it's almost better if you've never experienced it to go through it, to figure it out, rather than having done it once or twice where you go, oh, do I have to start this thing again because it's so huge? And the other thing, you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of it is creative and a lot of it is just labor. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think, I don't want to do the labor part, but you have to do
that. But it's like any creative project, right? Because, whether you're doing a show, whether you're doing a play, whether you're singing a song, I mean, if I'm booked for a gig and as I shared with you before we even started this, I'm singing again for the first time in 12 years. Oh yeah, that's right. It takes work, right? We figure out a song. My boyfriend's, he's an amazing guitar player, and we pick out the song. We work for weeks on it, probably every single night on a set of songs until I'm off book. He's got it memorized. And then we work, on the percussions, and we add this and tweak that. And how does this sound? We record ourselves, we hear back. Every creative process is a process, and you got to be in it to win it, right? You can't, you just can't run when it gets difficult or it is arduous. I think it's just part of the path.
Well, I do think you're hitting on exactly what a lot of people bump into in any part of any career. When the going gets tough, the tough get going, is the old John Wayne saying. But the truth of it is, that's where you have to dig in and get real about. You have to finish things. And again, back to what we've talked about earlier, in more cases than not, you have to do the finishing. There's nobody that's going to finish it for you. Even if you have a publisher, even if you have an agent, even if you have a manager, those people may or may not really help you carry it over the finish line. You have to be there for it. And unless you're really famous, like super famous, where you have lots of people working for you all day long, you are going to have to carry the ball. And that's true for you as a media personality. That's true for me as a doing my podcast and so on. You have to do it on your own. Nobody's going to do it for you, right?
100%. I've got some clients right now. They're co-authoring a book together. They're private clients. And I've been working with them for a while, and they've been hitting a lot of snafus, and they're paying me nicely. And we get on our calls and they're like, we didn't do anything since last time. Uh-huh. And so, we had to come to Jesus moment. We had to we really got to talk about this, because you don't have to pay me just to, meet up with you. And I had just read this gentleman's first book. So I was working with him already. I knew a little bit about his story. He has such a dramatic story that actually caused him to get into the media limelight. And he sent me the book after we started working together. And I finished reading the book and I was blown away. It was such a page turner, which I love. Mm-hmm. And it was a compelling story, beautifully written. And so I learned more about him reading that book, and also realized, this guy's good. What is going on with this project? So I asked the question, then, look, you don't need me. I don't need you. Why are we doing this? I adore you guys. You guys want to create the project. Awesome. But you've got to do the writing for us to have book writing coaching sessions. And Yeah, they had just completely stalled. So I said, why are you doing this? Like, explain to me why you want to write this book. And I was very open to the fact that they may say, oh, yeah, we're not sure we do. But instead, Paul is his name, harkened back to exactly the moment he got excited, when he got the download, if you will, that said, I need to write this book. I need to tell this story.
Mhm.
This has to be the second part of what was told in the first book. You could hear it in his voice. You could see how impassioned the guy was on fire. And listening to him, I'm like, there's your why. Every big idea needs a why.
That's brilliant. Every big idea does need a why. Otherwise, why bother?
Why bother?
Why
And
bother?
Paul hearing himself say that, done. He reconnected, realigned, and went, oh. Then we talked about the reality of their lives and how busy, he's a very successful businessman, no problem. But everybody can do this. I work with mothers with 2 small children at home who are able to find a Sunday to write. So yes, the why pulls you forward. You have to be connected when it gets tough. What was the vision, the why, the mission? Why am I doing this? Let that re-inspire you over and over again to stay on the path.
When did you think to yourself you were pretty good at coaching, at bringing these kinds of things out of people? Did you think that right from the very beginning, or did you have to do it a while before you thought to yourself, I'm pretty decent at this?
Yeah, I think I had to do it a while.
But you had your own vision about doing it, or you never would have started doing it. I'm going to guess you didn't do it because you thought you'd get rich out of it.
I did it because I was asked, Steve. That's really what happened.
There you go. So you took it on because you were asked. That simple.
Yeah, it was so simple and so amazing because I had no designs at all. I was very happy being on radio and podcasts, very happy writing my own books, very happy speaking on stage, going to red carpet events and interviewing. I love all of that, love. And then people came to me because I was writing books a long time ago, 12 years ago, before everybody, a lot of different entrepreneurs suddenly said, I need to do this. And so people were coming to me and saying, I'd like to learn that. How did you do that? They were seeing me being interviewed. I'd like to learn that. How do you do that? And so I just started opening classes. I was also in masterminds, and pretty impressive people to me, and we'd go around the circle at the end, do you have an ask? Is there something you'd like help on? And people would say over and over again, yeah, anybody know a podcast host or a radio host I'd like to be interviewed? I'm like, all right, you don't know how to do that? Oh my gosh, then let me teach you, because this is not rocket science. And once you understand the system, there's tremendous freedom. If you have a launch, or just, need to do you out into the world and be meet all your right people through like your show, Steve. Who knows who I'll meet by doing this? It's relevant.
And so it was a while of you doing it before you felt like you were actually good at being a coach, a teacher, whatever you want to call that. Was there something that gave you that notion that, yeah, I actually understand what I'm doing here and I'm decent at it? Was there something that was a pivot moment?
I think mostly for me, it was building systems.
What does that mean, building systems?
Like, instead of being a big splat of information on the wall, once I started, reverse engineering has been huge in my life. It's actually the way my brain works. So if I understand that I or my client is here, exactly where I am right now, but my dream and vision is out here, whether it's writing a book, being interviewed, gaining more viral attention, or finding my people and delivering what it is I really desire to deliver. But, there's a big gap. So that's a goal. How do I get to that goal? If I try to think linearly to get there, I don't do very well. But if I go all the way out into the goal, what that must be like, and I figure out what needs to happen right before the step, right before the goal. Okay. And I write that down. And what's the step right before that? And the step right before that. It's like a rubber band, right? So I go out to the goal and I figure all the steps in reverse, if you will.
Do you know what that's the same as?
Mm-mm.
That's the same as figuring out how to write a mystery.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Well, yep, because you need to know what the end of the mystery is in order to set everything up to get to the mystery being revealed.
That's so cool. That's one of my favorite genres in the whole world.
Well, think about it. How would you write a mystery if you don't know what the end is? Unless you are super, super smart and talented and can find your way to that goal. But most people, when they write a mystery, they figure here's the solution to the puzzle, and now I'm going to build the steps backwards. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so I also want to talk for a while with you about podcasting in general. I know you started in radio, but podcasting is now a major thing. There are over 1 million podcasts in the world, over 1 million podcasts. Who the heck can listen to even a tiny, tiny fraction of all that? So, all right. If no one knows what Dare to Dream is, tell them what Dare to Dream is and what it's about.
Dare to Dream originally began because of what Steve and I were just talking about, which is that I figured out a recipe how to create dreams about 14 years ago. It was a big deal for me. And I realized, oh, this is what I've been doing. Again, system. So when I wanted to run a marathon, and that was like, really, how do you go from where I am to doing 26.2 miles? Like inconceivable. But if I put myself out to the dream and said, I finished a marathon, what would it take? And worked my way back, the right shoes, the right coaches, the right training, starting 8 months early, knowing what to eat, knowing what kind of training course over 8 months, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the time I was done, I had a roadmap. And that's what I needed, because I can follow a recipe. Left to my own devices, maybe not so good. I don't know that creatives can always figure their way out of a paper bag, but I needed recipes. And I was so excited that when I started doing radio, originally I was doing a music show. It was so not me. I made it as interesting as I could, but the station brought me in and said, we want to give you your own show. What would it be? And I went home and thought about it. And I just went, oh my God, I want to teach this stuff. I want to bring on people who are like crazy successful, have created their dreams. How did they create their dreams? To like have that conversation and then like give this information away so people can have a lot of ease and inspiration. And that's originally the only thing we talked about. And that was over 13 years ago. But as time went on and I began to broaden my own horizons, my conversation became skewed differently because my interest became different. I went into more thought leaders, way deep dived into metaphysics, into spirituality. I wanted to hear from world-renowned people who were having like deep, wild, scientific, like blow my mind kind of conversations. I wanted to ask questions I couldn't ask anywhere else in my life. And even that is changing. And thankfully, my audience has never abandoned me, in all my curiosity pursuits, but they are sticking with me. So it's been an interesting journey, really, again, following the energy and the excitement for me and feeling super blessed about who I get to hang out with and the things we get to talk about. I've learned, honestly, there's almost nobody I can't reach out to and say, do you want to spend an hour together on a show? And doesn't mean it always works out, but it often does. So the power of asking, has been pretty powerful for me.
Well, that for sure, that's what salesmen talk about. And that's what you're doing to an extent, is you're selling yourself and your show, and you're reaching out to people when you're doing that. And you have to get in the sales, when you're trying to make a sale, at some point you have to get to what they call the ask. And if you just tell people about what the show is about, but don't ask them to be on the show, they go, yeah, that was nice. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. So that's a very important part of even any part of a career in the arts. If you want to sell your screenplay, if you want to sell your book, if you want to be an actor, you have to be willing to ask people if this is something they would like to go forward with. And without that ask, more often than not, nothing happens. So I think that was a really wise thing for you to come to, that understanding that you had to ask.
It's so up for me in my life, this awareness that you're talking about. I think I was just doing it. Now I'm highly aware of it. So even if I have a moment anywhere in my life, I remember it's almost like a mantra: ask for what you want and need. Honestly, I think the universe is a 401k plan. I put this much in, I get this huge percentage back, this big ROI. And I am always moved by how often people say yes. Some of that, by the way, is relationship.
Sure.
I don't want to lie. It's not just going up to a stranger and saying, hey, want to buy my book or want to do this, want to do that. That doesn't work out. You don't want to get in bed with somebody who's a stranger. But I do think asking for what you want and need, saying it in a way, when people can feel you, like really feel you. I've booked people, honestly, just from that. I've had a few people who are pretty well known who have said, I don't do this. Like, I just don't do this. And you asked, and all I kept hearing was, yes, go do it. So whether they feel my heart or what's possible,
By the way, it helps to have a show in the first place. So
and a following.
It helps a lot, doesn't it? Because if you don't have that, then they're going, what the heck am I doing? But, I've had the great good fortune to have a handful of really famous people on this show. And it has always blown my mind that they have said yes. But it's nice that you have a show that you can show them, the show's not going to harm you, and you might actually gain from it, and they get some benefit out of on top of it. So I think that's very important. How do you find guests? Do you generally seek them yourself, or do they come to you, or is it both?
Most often they come to me. Yeah. And that's just because I've been doing it so long. I'm known by so many publicists and agents. And that's, I'm on enough of their lists. It's, you can only take so many people. So it's often a no for me, but it's sometimes a yes. Sometimes it is because I've seen someone on television and I've heard their subject and I want to explore it deeper. And sometimes it is, like I had a host from a TV show on recently, and I was so fortunate to be in a workshop experience with him last year. And we had lunch. I wasn't the only one there. There were a few other people, but I was expecting him to be like a Hollywood personality, which I'm not really attracted to at all.
Right.
He wasn't. He was a mensch. He was just so real. Like, you could really feel his heart. Super intelligent, like really very interesting, the things he was sharing. I felt very connected to him. And, when lunch was coming to an end, I knew like I'm not done. And so I just reached out and I said, hey, I would really love to feature you on the show. What do you say? And then, I asked even more, because even after you got booked, typically my shows are 55 minutes because it also goes out, it's syndicated on radio.
Right.
But I was like, there's no way I'm doing 55 minutes with this guy. This has to be a special show, has to be at least a two-parter. So I said, do you mind going longer? Can we deep dive like 2.5 hours? He was a hell yeah. And it's like one of the greatest interviews. Like, he really knew how to bring the conversation, and it just escalated and escalated. So we broke it up into several parts that have all aired and get a lot of attention. But yeah, I don't ask, occasionally, most of the people come to me and I'm pretty clear who I'm looking for. And sometimes I'm surprised, sometimes I'm surprised that somebody just pops on paper.
Isn't that the best, when you're not expecting it and suddenly there it is?
Yeah.
And I've had that happen on this show too, where guests that I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I'll tell you what I get more often than not. I get a huge number of guests that I've asked to be on the show, and they say to me, I don't think I have anything to say. And I say to them, do the show. I promise you, you'll have plenty to say. And what I've learned, and we'll see if you agree with this, what I've learned is the way that people reveal themselves is by asking the right questions.
Like what, Steve?
Well, like what? You've already heard a few today. But one of the secrets to being a good teacher is not the offering of information, but the asking of the right questions. And when you ask the wrong questions, or maybe wrong's the wrong way to say it, when you ask questions that are unhelpful, they don't solicit answers that give anybody any help. But when you ask the right questions, suddenly all this information comes out.
Oh, that's so good. Like, can we stop on that one? Because, and how easy is that to ask and listen? And I have found this exactly what you're saying in my coaching. And I think that's the difference from when I started to who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
If I go into a situation, you know, you can't figure out everybody's life or purpose, or, you know, how to help them get out of a situation they're in, or how to right a ship that's not going well. But if you will ask the right questions, such a beautiful salient point, they know, everybody knows the truth. And if not, then in their response, we will all find out what is next.
Well, I think at least half the time, most people are afraid of the right questions, and so they don't ask it of themselves. Then when somebody from the outside asks them that question, then they're sort of forced to come up with an answer, whether it's the perfect answer or not. That's an irrelevant point. But the question itself is what elicits the response, and that response is then the trigger to everything else. Does that make
And
sense?
can I just say that's so true in relationship too?
It is.
I mean,
It's
even if you're in a
truly true.
romantic relationship, if you will just stop and ask the question and listen to your partner, you know, you can turn everything around. Being heard, for all of us as humans, to be seen, to be heard, to be feeling like we're special somewhere, that we're
Mhm.
noticed. That's all most of us
Well,
really want.
well, being an interviewer of people on a show like what we're doing right now, we're forming a relationship, a bond of some kind. And so, yes, I think exponentially becomes into all relationships. And I do think people in business, if they ask the right questions, they get answers they're looking for. If they ask the wrong questions, or the inappropriate question, or an unuseful question, then they don't get the answer they want. So it is all about the formation of the question. I'm curious about your show prep. When you get ready to do an episode, what kind of prep do you go through? How much work is it?
Yeah, people don't realize I'm not the person who's just going to suddenly show up and hang out with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to research you.
That's
And
me
I don't
too.
think, right? And I don't know if you go through this, Steve,
I
but
do.
oy vey gefilte fish. I mean, I almost everybody's got a book. So trying to read a book in a week. You know, thank you. By the way, you're coming on my show, and I'm excited for that. And you
Me
gave me the
too.
grace of the time to really digest your book. And instead of just, you know, some crazy week, but you have to read the book. I do. Not everybody does. I do. I think it's important. And I also like to go out there. I don't necessarily, I've learned if I listen to someone's other interviews, it's not as good for me. I've tried that. It doesn't actually work. It's better for me though if I do my own digging, if I
Mm-hmm.
be the archaeologist, and then I find the places and spaces where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to deep dive here. What is this about for this person? Because I can tell, like almost in a pattern, there's something they're exceptional at. And that's what I'm curious about. So yes, there's stuff that goes into it. There's questions I form. I have point in case, I have Whitley Strieber coming
Yes.
back on the show.
Really, the Whitley Strieber.
I love him so much I can't even. And can I tell you that he's so adorable that on Wednesday, I opened up Zoom and there he was. And I'm like, it took him 5 minutes. Whitley, hi, Whitley, Whitley. I couldn't get his attention. He was working in the background and everything was muted. And he finally came on. I said, darling, you're here 2 weeks early. He said, oh, I'm so sorry, but I'm so excited to be with you again. And my actual interview also chimed in on Zoom. We were all there together. Do you have everything you need? I said, don't worry. I'm good. You know, like you need Whitley to send you anything. And I certainly don't need his questions. So case in point, I am already, my God, I'm listening to his books on tape, and I've been so fascinated with him for decades. And
Well, I think for the audience that does not know who Whitley Strieber is, he writes books mainly about UFOs and aliens and space things, and usually in a way that's very, very compelling.
One of the greatest storytellers, truly. And even as a human, when you ask him a question, one of the greatest storytellers. And he started out as a great, very well-known American novelist for this very same reason, until he had certain things happen and then revealed in the 1980s through his books Communion and otherwise that he'd had some very incredible experiences. And then yes, more will be revealed, but he's still very much involved in all that. He has his own podcast. But yes, I bring up Whitley because I'm already deep in it with him. And I cannot wait. My questions, it's like I'm a kid. And, how did I get so lucky to be invited to this table with this man who I know?
Yeah, I understand.
What he's going to bring to the, and the illumination, the possibilities. And even if I think I'm prepared, all the other fireworks that are going to go off. So yes, I absolutely do my work on everybody. I, much like you, I'm not the gotcha kind of person. I'm not into making anyone uncomfortable, but when I can, I like to ask something that people maybe don't know that I know. I like finding out tidbits and things about people that may be impressed, but could open up conversation. And occasionally I push envelopes a little bit. I've done it with an American Idol, and I did it once with the three tenors where I just I really wasn't supposed to ask this question, but I was on camera with the three tenors and I just said, "Oh my God, would you be willing to sing something a cappella?" Haha. And gosh, they sang Hallelujah to me. One of the three tenors just pulled out his arm, brought me into the three of them. So we were a yummy foursome, and the three just sang to me. I mean, I was cavelling. It was a moment I will never forget. How beautiful. So sometimes those are the exciting moments when you ask for something. And I will tell you also, I used to ask a question I haven't asked in a long time, and long ago it brought up some very powerful responses. And I believe the question was something like, what is the most difficult thing you've had to go through in your life? It was shocking sometimes what people shared and what you got to see behind the curtain, the humanity that was there that you would not have known otherwise.
Well, what a nice segue, because my next question is, what's the biggest challenge that you have in putting the show on, or what challenges you pretty much all the time? Is it doing all that research? Is it finding people? What's the big challenge for you?
Such a good question. And I want to be just as transparent with you. I think there's a lot of noise out there. When I started and I was doing radio, and this is, I'll answer from a very egoic place. I would go to a party, and if somebody said, "What do you do?" and I'd say, "Oh, I'm on radio." Oh, it's such a big deal. Now, if you go to a party and say, "I have a podcast," it's like everyone lights a cigar.
Yeah, so what?
Yeah, so does my uncle and my kid. So, there's a lot of noise even after 13 years.
But you know what, Debbie, the difference is whether the podcast is of quality or not. And it's just like what you're talking about in developing your book that you might self-publish. It still has to be high quality. Same with podcasts, because a lot of podcasts are not high quality. Even though there's a million of them out there, there probably are less than 1,000 of them that are really great, and maybe even less than that. What is the biggest challenge?
Because when I started, it was like you just needed a great show and everybody knew who you were. But now it's, you have to have someone who's doing social media and somebody who could edit and somebody, who maybe is running the sound and who's putting it here and there and, sending out, if you do a newsletter, do the links or the show notes or, all of that. It's, sort of become a big business, if you will. So, and I'm a creative. I don't love the technical stuff. I'm pretty good at most of it, but I don't love it. So I would say that's a big thing. And one of the things I will say as far as challenges that I've learned is how to pivot.
I would say that that's a huge thing to learn, and it's not a natural thing for most people. That's true in a conversation at a party, is how to pivot, let alone on the air or in a recording like this. How do you switch gears when you're not prepared to switch the gears? You've gotten good at that, yes?
Yes. I had, for instance, my radio station, there were California fires. I'm trying to remember if it's 2 or 3 years ago, but the radio station I was with, still am, burned down. And, as a what the heck am I going to do moment. And my first thought was, I've been doing this so long. What would it be like to take a couple of weeks off and then revisit this? And that was like, yeah, let's just have a little space and capacity. And then I looked at who I was going to reach out to and cancel. And I went, are you serious? Sean Stone, Oliver Stone's son, was coming on. And, he's very well known in his own right. He's written books. He's a host of several TV shows. I mean, he's a big personality out there. And it took me 6 months to book him. Carolyn Mace was coming on. It took me so long to book all these people. And I'm like, I'm not going to try to reschedule. So I was honest. And I reached out and I said, look, station is burned down. They're rebuilding, but that will take whatever it will take. I'm curious. There's this thing called Zoom, and I use it to teach classes. What would that be like if we did the show on Zoom, and I will do whatever I do, sans the radio station? Are you in? Would you be willing? And to a man and a woman, they all said yes. So I asked for what I needed, right? They all said yes. I was honest. And thankfully they said yes, because who would know that 3 years later there would be a pandemic, and to be using Zoom at the level I am with the ease I am would be everything. There was zero pivot then when everybody else was going into crisis mode, but they all said yes. And the gift, besides what I've said, is I didn't realize how important it was for me to be on camera. And so I had just been audio only up until that point. And then I started also putting my show on YouTube, youtube.com/Debbi Dachinger. And all of a sudden, boom, there was a whole nother segment of people who could find me, and that was blowing up. And it was like, note to self, find your sweet spot, stay in that path. Radio has been very good to me. Podcast has been good to me, but camera's my home. That's really where I belong.
You're going all the way back to your roots, Debbi, where you need to be on stage in the spotlight. That's where you're most comfortable.
That is correct.
How many shows a year do you do?
Oof. I wish I could tell you, like, it's not, I basically have a weekly show, but there are always times when I cannot fit everybody in, and there's more desire than there's time. Right. So I'll make exceptions and I'll do a couple extra shows. And then of course, if I do the rare but occasional 1 and 2 parters for somebody. So I don't know, maybe 80 shows.
That's a lot of shows. That's more than one a week is a lot of shows.
Yeah. And
you do it on your own. You don't have a staff of any kind, right?
I do. I have a business manager, and she runs a lot of things for me. And, as somebody taught me early on in the business, the more money you make, the more you hire. And so that's exactly where I'm headed.
Does she book for you, or do you do your own booking?
My booking? No, it's so simple at this point. I have one thing. I don't rewrite a thing. Just somebody's name gets inserted. Once they agree to be on the show and the date, they get sent something also automatically through Google Calendar. It says everything they need, everything I need, even past shows, should they want to listen. And hopefully you do before you come on to anybody's show, you know the vibe. And then, they get reminders. Everything's automatically set up. It's so easy peasy.
Well, that is the way to do it. And it took you a while to get to that. That was not an early thing for you at all.
I was not an early adopter. No.
I want to talk to you for just a brief moment about writing. How much do you like to write?
Oh, it's so bittersweet for me. There's something about writing, and I know it's in my wheelhouse. I know we have this interesting love weird relationship, but I know writing will always be a part of my life. And so how much do I enjoy it? I'm fascinated by it, I think, more than anything. And the only way that I can write is that when I get something that, like, I feel I have to write. I have one book I'm working on right now in the background. That's about some very, very specific journeys I've been taking over the past couple of years. I won't say too much about it, but it's pretty cutting edge. And then I have another book that is a little bit hilarious that just came to me like, this is yours to do. And I'm not sure, I have to get more clarity. I'm probably gonna have to reverse engineer it so I get really clear how to disseminate it. Because it would be like a book, we would sell at a Kitson, or it'll be a little bit more novelty, but very much to the point of a subject. And it actually has to do with yoga, but it's something very funny around yoga that I want to do.
Do you think that what you write in the books you've written, well, obviously Dare to Dream is the same as the title of your podcast, so they're tied in a way, if not totally. Do you think that what you write and your show, do you think that they impact one another, that one hand is washing the other?
Absolutely. And especially in the beginning, Steve, because teaching how to create dreams, having people on who created dreams. Yes, I think being niche is very good to have all your brands, if you will, and all your projects aligned. I have definitely gotten out of sync. I haven't done much about it because there's no way I can change the name of my program at this point. I teach much less about creating dreams, although it's obviously a part of what I do. And
more about spirituality, I think. Yeah.
I think very much so. And that's probably what my books, well, it is what all my books would reflect at this point. Yes.
I don't think there's anything wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that title. I have a little bit of the same problem right here with the title StoryBeat. People think it's all about writers and writing, and it really isn't. It's about artists and creativity and process. So it's the same thing. You start with a title and you live with that title, and otherwise you're changing your brand basically. So you don't want to do that.
Exactly.
All right. So no, go ahead, finish.
I think the other piece of that is, what the beauty of niche is, it makes it easy for people to find you. So, if you're going to write something about health, you could call it health, or you could get really specific and call your show and your books autoimmune, or herpes or something like that. And, everybody knows what they're going to get when they get to your show. So,
well, if you're going to call your show herpes, you're hoping everyone catches it.
No, or gets over it somehow. The solution to.
So I've been talking to this absolutely divine human named Debbi Dachinger for a little more than an hour now, and we're going to kind of wind this thing down. I'm just wondering, in all of your experiences, and you've had many of them, can you share any experiences that are either weird, strange, quirky, offbeat, or maybe just plain funny?
Early on in my radio show, early-ish, I had on one of the contenders for American Idol for the TV show, a really amazing singer. She was booked to come on the show. And that was back in the lazy days when I would think, oh, I'm just on microphone. Who needs to get all dolled up? And I was not wearing my best possible outfit. It probably had the energy of a muumuu. I don't think I really had makeup on. My hair was sort of messy. And what would happen is I would get a call from security that my guest was there. I'd leave the studio. It was really a gorgeous, very classy building. And I'd walk out into the lobby, meet and greet my guest, pick them up and bring them in. And, always that for me was the beginning. Especially because I had only had contact with her publicist at that point. So it was all about developing relationships so that by the time the mics went on, we were, it was really a beautiful flow and connection going on. What happened is I walked down the hallway, turned the corner into the lobby, and was met with a camera in my face. And not a photographer, but actually it turned out they were going to do a documentary, and without telling me in advance, they brought all their equipment, the whole team. And there I was. And I mean, the bubble over my head. I was so embarrassed to be dressed like that, to look like that. And in our business, show business, you do the opposite. You smile, you act confident, yeah, I knew all about this. I dressed just for you. Oh my God. So I met everybody. And I mean, it just got bigger from there because, do you mind if we film a little while you start the interview? Oh, when the interview was done, do you mind if you go in front of the step and repeat? And can we take some pictures of you together that we're going to use for PR?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, makeup, hair, wardrobe. If I could have, and I am telling you my big takeaway, Steve, and I've never changed. Like you and I are on camera. I'm done. I'm not big. I don't have fake eyelashes. I don't have much going on, but I put on mascara. My hair is done. I'm wearing a nice top.
Mhm.
I have kept that ever since. I will never turn another corner in a professional situation and not look and act professional.
So back to all the way back to the beginning of, it's all about preparing and putting your best foot forward at all times. Talk about pivoting. You really had to make the best of a bad moment. Yeah.
It's the first time I realized that I could cover up, in the photographs, instead of just standing there and having pictures taken. I was really so beside myself. I did all sorts of things with my hands, and she was awesome. Like, we were actually having so much fun that anyone who looks at the pictures would see us doing, like you're looking at me right now. We were doing all sorts of big gestures in the pictures that made it very funny and light. And anyone looking at the picture, I was covering like a mofo. Like, what can I do to make this moment work? And she was playing right along with me. So looking back in the pictures, they're very fun. And you would not, I think, have focused so much on, like, what is this girl wearing? What was she thinking?
Well, you survived it somehow, and that was a good lesson to learn. So, last question for today, Debbi. We've obviously covered huge ground here and talked lots of advice for people, but do you have a solid piece of advice or a tip that you can lend to those that are just starting out in the business, or maybe they're in a little bit but trying to get to that next level?
Relationship is everything. I have always been like this, and I'm so grateful that this one was always easy for me, and it's had a huge payoff. I think to understand that, don't think you know what somebody's job is. I remember as a kid, if somebody was doing lighting, I was like, oh my God, that you even know how to do that. If you were doing sound, if you were a musician, whatever your job was, very respectful, always. You never know when you need somebody, but also when you meet somebody, you don't know where they're headed. And they may eventually be in a position where you reconnect, and having a very good rapport is extremely important, and a real rapport. And that's everything from, I locked my keys in, something, and I need your help, and you were once a janitor and you have the keys, and they really come to your rescue, or, to somebody you're going to do some kind of collaboration with. So I think relationship is everything. And then I'll harken back to what I said earlier. Really ask for what you need. Develop a relationship, ask for what you want and need, and be willing to give people also what will help further them. If you can show up in those ways, it can be a career changer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a theme to that that's run through, but that's a really wise way of putting it. It's be nice to everybody on the way up, because you never know when you're going to see them on the way back down. That's that old Hollywood adage. And what you're saying is absolutely applicable in pretty much everything you do. Be kind to others. Don't take anyone for granted. Doesn't matter whether they're the guard at the gate or whether they're the janitors or whoever. These people are working, and they're potentially of some value in your relationship life at some point. And so you have to treat everybody that way.
Yes. And because somebody is going to be above me, and I want them to treat me with kindness
Absolutely.
and respect too.
Absolutely. You're putting out that which you hope to receive. So I think that is really wise and valuable advice. Debbi Dachinger, this has been a fantastic show today. So much great stuff. And I can't tell you how much I really loved seeing you today and chatting with you about your life and your career and your process. So I'm very grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's been an honor. Thank you.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.